Lena's parents had noticed the subtle changes over the last few months, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. The way Lena, their 17-year-old daughter, seemed so lost in thought at times, as if she was wrestling with something too big to express. They weren't sure if it was the typical teenage angst or if it was something deeper. Her mother, Karen, first noticed it during a family barbecue. Lena had been laughing and joking with her friends, but when a group of girls walked by, Lena's gaze lingered a little too long. It wasn't just a casual glance. There was something else in her eyes. A curiosity, perhaps, or a longing. Karen dismissed it at first, assuming it was just normal growing pains. After all, Lena had been a bit more withdrawn lately, but nothing out of the ordinary for someone her age. But then her father, Greg, started to notice it too. He was sitting with Lena in the living room watching TV. The scene had been a typical action movie, with a strong female lead. Lena had turned her head just a little too much to the side when the actress appeared on screen. Greg thought it was just his imagination, but the look in Lena's eyes was unmistakable. A soft smile played on her lips, almost wistful. It was like she saw something in the actress that Greg couldn't understand. "Hey, Lena," he said casually, trying to keep the conversation light. "You like that actress?" Lena quickly snapped her gaze away from the screen, a little embarrassed, but Greg didn't miss the flush creeping up her neck. I guess she's cool," Lena muttered, shrugging, her eyes avoiding Greg's. Karen and Greg exchanged a glance, both unsure of what to make of it. Had Lena been looking at the actress because she admired her talent, or was there something more to it? They didn't know, but the idea seemed to hang in the air like an unsolved puzzle. In the following days, the little things started adding up. Lena spent more time on her phone than usual, and when Karen would try to look over her shoulder, she'd quickly hide whatever was on the screen. Sometimes, Lena would mumble under her breath, a faint "God, I'm so dumb," or "I don't look like her." Karen noticed that Lena had started wearing more baggy clothes, as if to hide her body from view. "Do you think she's self-conscious?" Karen asked Greg one evening. "I mean, she's been so withdrawn lately. She barely talks to us." Greg hesitated, glancing out the window. He wasn't one to dwell on such things. He liked to keep things simple, work hard, provide for the family, and leave emotions to Karen. But this was different. Lena's behavior didn't just scream insecurity. There was something else there, something hidden. "I don't know," he muttered. "Maybe we should just let her talk when she's ready." The question lingered in Karen's mind. Was Lena struggling with self-doubt, or was she coming to terms with something she wasn't sure how to express? It was a question they didn't want to ask, but they both knew it needed to be addressed sooner or later. The next week, it happened. Lena came home late from a friend's house, looking unusually flustered. She didn't even take her shoes off before heading straight to her room, shutting the door with a soft thud behind her. Karen followed her upstairs, her heart heavy with uncertainty. "Lena?" Karen knocked softly on the door, unsure of how to even start the conversation. "Can we talk?" A few seconds passed before the door creaked open, and Lena stood there, eyes wide, as if caught in the act. Hey, Mom. I was just wondering if everything's okay," Karen said gently, trying to keep her voice steady. "You've been acting a little different lately. If you're feeling anything, you know you can talk to me." Lena shifted from foot to foot, the nervous energy radiating from her. She opened her mouth to say something, but her words tangled in her throat. "I don't know how to say it," Lena finally whispered, her voice cracking slightly. I think I like girls." The silence that followed was heavy, but not in a bad way. Karen's heart ached, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts: fear, confusion, love, and acceptance. She could see the vulnerability in Lena's eyes, the fear that her daughter might be expecting rejection. But she also knew, deep down, that this was a moment of truth. Karen took a deep breath, walking slowly toward Lena and pulling her into a hug. "Lena," she said softly, "it's okay. You're still you. You're still my daughter, and nothing will ever change that." Lena stiffened at first, unsure, but then she melted into the embrace, her shoulders trembling. "I was so scared," she whispered. "Scared of you not loving me anymore. Scared of what everyone would think." Karen held her tighter, rocking her gently. "Sweetheart, you don't ever have to be scared of that. You're perfect just the way you are." And in that moment, everything clicked into place for both of them. The confusion, the questions, the tension, it all faded away. Lena didn't need to explain further. Her mother had already understood. As they sat together on the bed, Karen smiled softly. "You're not alone, Lena. And you don't have to figure it all out right away. Just remember we're here for you, no matter what." Lena looked up at her mother, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from relief. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered. And for the first time in months, Lena felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She was no longer just guessing at who she was, she knew. And more importantly, she knew she would never have to face it alone. A few days had passed since Lena had told Karen, and the weight of that conversation still lingered in the air. It had been one of the most emotional moments of Lena's life, sharing her truth with her mother, a truth she hadn't known how to express for so long. The sense of relief was overwhelming, but it also created a new kind of tension. As much as Lena knew her mother would always have her back, the thought of telling her dad filled her with anxiety. Greg had always been a man of few words, pragmatic and steady. Lena wasn't sure how he would react. He'd never been the most open when it came to emotions, and she feared his response might not be as warm as her mother's. But she couldn't keep this secret from him forever. She knew it would eat away at her if she didn't. It was late one evening when Lena decided to take the plunge. She and Karen had just finished dinner, and Lena had retreated to her room to gather her thoughts. She sat at her desk, hands trembling slightly, as she texted her mom. "Lena, do you think I should tell Dad?" The reply came quickly. "Karen, sweetheart, I think it's time. But remember, he loves you no matter what." Lena hesitated, staring at the text. She knew her mom was right. It was time. With a deep breath, she walked downstairs, finding Greg sitting on the couch, flipping through channels. The familiar hum of the TV filled the space between them, but Lena couldn't shake the knot in her stomach. "Dad," she called softly, her voice wavering slightly. Greg turned his head, his face lighting up with that warm, half-smile he always gave her. "Yeah, kiddo?" Lena walked into the living room, her palms sweaty, but she couldn't back down now. She sat down next to him, trying to steady her breathing. I need to talk to you about something." She bit her lip, searching for the right words. Greg raised an eyebrow, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Of course. What's going on?" Lena's heart pounded in her chest. The world seemed to narrow, the moment suddenly feeling too big, too important. She glanced over at her mom, who was standing quietly by the doorway, offering her a reassuring smile. With a deep breath, Lena turned back to her dad. I think I might be a lesbian," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Greg sat still for a moment, processing the words. For a second, Lena thought he hadn't heard her, but then he slowly exhaled, setting the remote down on the coffee table. His gaze softened, and he met her eyes, studying her as if he were looking for something, anything, to help him understand. "Okay," he said, his voice low, almost neutral. Lena felt her stomach drop. She had expected more of a reaction, something to show he was grappling with it. But this was too calm, too distant. "Dad," she said, her voice cracking. Are you okay with it?" Greg took a deep breath, looking at his daughter like he was considering his next words carefully. "Lena, I'm not going to lie," he said slowly. "I don't completely understand it. But I want you to know that I love you, and that's not going to change." Lena's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the effusive response she'd hoped for, but it was better than she'd feared. "I guess I don't really get it," Greg continued, his tone softening as he tried to explain. "But you're still my daughter, and that means everything to me. I might not know what it's like for you, but I'm not going to turn my back on you." Tears welled up in Lena's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief, not fear. She wasn't sure what she'd been expecting, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off her chest. Her father might not fully understand her, but he loved her enough to try. "I just didn't want you to think I was hiding something from you," Lena said quietly, wiping at her eyes. I didn't want you to think I was ashamed. Greg reached out and pulled her into a hug, his arms strong and steady. You don't have to hide anything from me. I might not have all the answers, but I'll always be here for you. That's what matters. Karen walked over and stood beside them, placing a gentle hand on Lena's back. We'll figure this out together, she said softly, her voice filled with warmth. Lena looked between her parents, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. She had feared this moment for so long, dreading the idea that her parents might reject her, might not understand. But now, standing there with both of them, her mother's unwavering support and her father's gentle acceptance, Lena realized she was no longer alone in her journey. I love you both, Lena whispered, her voice thick with emotion. We love you too, kiddo, Greg said, his voice rough with unspoken affection. And for the first time in a long while, Lena felt a sense of peace. It wasn't about having all the answers or figuring everything out right away. It was about knowing that, no matter what, she was loved. And that, she realized, was enough.